So, 3, 2, 1, and we live. Okay, another podcast, another Actflix podcast, and I have someone that I saw on the internet at some point, probably a year or two ago, and I was like, who's that guy? He's running workshop in Amsterdam and giving talk here and there. And then I got to meet him first time in Dublin 2 weeks ago. So, Roy, thank you.
Yeah. So we met 2 weeks ago in Dublin.
Yeah, thanks for coming to the Actflix podcast. And I think one of the main reason I was like, when I met you in Dublin, I was like, I need to sit with this guy on the podcast, is because I looked on what you've done. I look up on the internet, and I realized that you're everywhere. You do a lot of stuff, and I wanted to ask you if you know the concept of having 24 hours in a day, because it seems like you're doing so many things, and there is, how can you fit that into the 24 hours frame? So I'd be happy to know more about you. So I'm gonna describe you the way as my research is like. I end up framing you. So Roy is a software engineer based in Amsterdam. He's an entrepreneur, and you also do you're a speaker. You travel around the world to give a talk, and that's actually how we met in Dublin. And as you have upcoming talks, but we're gonna talk about that a bit later. Am I missing something?
No, you're right.
So can you tell us more about you and your journey, and your because, like, okay, let me rephrase that question. Like, you as I mentioned the 24 hours frame, and then I'm like, that guy is doing way so much, and I went pretty far in your history, and I'm like, that guy didn't study computer science, but is coaching, training people today. So, and then you build companies, and then you're running companies. I'm like, how do you do that? And what I'm interested in, I think people listening and watching us today, what was the transition from your study to run a company to start building software yourself? Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, that's something that started pretty early on, because I've always been doing entrepreneurial stuff. So in lower school, I was like selling stuff on school to other kids, like have my parents buy stuff for me and then sell it for a higher price. Yeah. So basically started entrepreneuring over there, because I don't know, I'm not sure if I was bored or just saw something else to do. But in the end, I think I was like 12, 13 or 14, was going to like middle school or high school. I'm not sure how you would call it best in every country, but I think I was like 14 years old. And then I wanted to have more pocket money, and all my friends, they started doing small jobs like bringing around newspapers or work in supermarkets. And for me, that felt like really boring. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. So I would just ask my parents for more money so I could buy more stuff. And they were like, nah, not going to happen. So then I was thinking about entrepreneuring more, and the internet just came available like everywhere. It has been around for a long time. My parents just got it. So I was looking up the internet, and I liked watching movies a lot. So I ended up making a website, because my parents wouldn't give me money to buy one. So I needed to make one myself. And that's actually when I started using programming to build new stuff.
Nice. Very good. And then you actually build a company website where people can exchange.
Yeah, so you could exchange DVDs and Blu-rays, and I wanted to do more like books and games and all these other stuff, but then Netflix came around, and I don't know, it became sort of collector's items, and I needed to go to university as well.
Nice. I'm just going to make sure that the mic is okay. Is it like we just push it a little bit your
closer?
Side? Yeah, closer, yeah. Cool. You give me a nod? Okay, pretty good. And then from there, so you that website or platform, you run that for about 5 years or something.
Yeah,
like
so
that.
I did it mostly throughout high school and like the first year of university.
Okay.
And then everything became just like really chaotic, and I didn't have time to run that website anymore. And then I was doing university, so
Were
business
you
economics.
making money out of that, or it was just
Yeah, I had like 2,000 or 3,000 paying customers. So they were paying money to get like more recommendations, more available trades, and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I was
Nice.
making some money out of it, but it cost me a lot of time, and people were sending emails every day. So in the end, I just decided to quit.
Okay. And then, but you didn't study computer science. You
No, I
went
studied
to
economics because I went to some computer science classes in the beginning just to check it out, see if it's something for me. And then I was there and like MySQL, I already know MySQL. And they were teaching all this other stuff. And I, okay, I already know this, so why would I do this?
Yeah. Okay. Nice. So then you from there studying economics, and then you went on and build another company.
Yeah, so before actually building another company myself, I worked for another company and they were building startups for corporates.
Okay.
So the company no longer exists, but one thing we built was like a TV guide application for KPN, one of the biggest telecom companies in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And it was sort of, the idea was to combine linear television with like video on demand.
Okay.
But in the end, they discontinued the product because like all sort of management changes and vision changes and
Yeah. But then I want to see the transition from there, because I got to know you because you were giving workshop like in React, giving talks on React, GraphQL, and obviously JavaScript as a whole, and I just want to see like at what moment you make that transition from I believe your first website, the first platform, you probably use things like what, PHP, MySQL and things like that. Then back then that was the main taught courses at universities.
Yeah.
That's why you thought, you actually said like, yeah, why would I go to those courses? I know already those tools. At what moment you make a transition toward these tools?
I think it's pretty late. It's like in 2015. So I've been building a lot of stuff with PHP, MySQL, a little bit of JavaScript.
Yeah.
And then the application I was just telling about, it was discontinued. And I was thinking about what to do with my life because I had like 1 year left in university.
Okay.
Something like that. And I went to, actually came in touch with some people online, and I just started Twitter and doing all that sort of stuff. So I came in touch with people online. And then I went to a hackathon in Berlin.
Okay.
So they paid for all the travel costs, which is pretty nice. And then in the hackathon, I met some people that were doing React Native, and also people from GraphQL. So they were actually one of the first companies building something with GraphQL.
Yeah.
So I met those people. Also a hackathon. We actually won a prize for like the best application in one category. I believe it was like smart mobility or something.
Okay.
But in the end, I learned a lot those days. And then I came back and then I finished my last year of university. And during that last year, also some guys approached me because they were building a startup.
Okay.
So again,
That's
a platform where people could not trade stuff, but buy and sell. So electronics, games, all those other stuff. So I was immediately interested and I could try all my new React skills, GraphQL skills in that company.
Yeah. So what is the thing? Because one of the things you mentioned is like you're not a big fan of Angular. So I'm curious to know, what is the thing that hook you into React? What are
to me, like, not to get too much in detail about this, if you really want to know, you should watch Byron's keynote at GraphQL in Berlin.
Okay.
Because he's sort of explaining how PHP, MySQL actually look a lot like React. If you really look at it and how we're moving now towards like a gem stack, stuff like that, React could be like a new MVC model and then be the view.
Okay.
So it isn't really that far away from PHP and MySQL. So somehow React felt really nice with all the life cycles and it was really easy to start with.
Okay.
I once tried out some Angular code for a project that they wanted me to do. Someone wanted me to hire for a project and it was already had an Angular code base. And I was looking at it. It was really hard to get started.
Okay. Okay, I understand. Then you React today. You've done React, and then at some point you have these Redux and all the tools that are there for state management, and then you jumped into GraphQL.
Yeah.
What was the main thing?
The main thing for me was like REST APIs can be really big and before REST you had SOAP, and I really hated SOAP. I had a bit of trouble getting
Or you
getting
use
around.
SOAP? Yeah, still?
Some
okay.
people still use them.
Okay.
They're still around, and I used them in the beginning as well.
Okay.
But now it was mostly REST, and the main thing with me was like, how can you define the REST structure? You get all this information from all those different calls. You need to nest them together. You need like async awaits. Maybe if you use Redux, you need like sagas. You get all the information there, and it feels really bloating.
Yeah, but then I still try to see, because you have you're replacing the REST APIs with GraphQL, but that's just the layer to communicate between your views and your backend. But then you still have that in your views you still have the to manage state between views, or did you have to use any storage mechanism? Or
in the beginning I really used Redux a lot with sagas mostly.
You were still using GraphQL to at least get the data you needed, and then
in some projects I did, but like my newer projects, what I try to avoid is having state management at all. Because usually you don't need that much state management. A lot of information can be flushed out really easy, and if you have good servers and caching, you don't really need state management, because you just send another request, and if it's cached, it's fine. And for some state, you can use like the context API from React, which I really like.
Yeah, context. And have you used things like which flavor of GraphQL do you use? Apollo, I believe.
I use Apollo for some projects, but what I mostly like to do is keep things simple. So try to get something like lower level, like Urquell, or maybe even stringify your body and send it to a post request.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. So, which one do you prefer then between Apollo and Urquell? Or
it really depends. Like Apollo is fine. There's a lot of options, but it's really bloated and really big. Urquell is way smaller. And a bit easier to use. They had hook support before even Apollo had it. And the thing with Apollo is if you're just using React Apollo and maybe Apollo server and nothing too fancy, then it's fine. But if you start using like all these other packages they have, it's really hard not to get locked in using their software. And also because it's so easy to use, it's also kind of tricky because you not really know what you're doing at some point. With all the caching and all these other things to do. And then you can have like resolvers on your server, and then they also offer you local resolvers, which makes it really really hard to see where your logic is at.
That's at the end of the day, the Apollo approach, or any other these kind of tools that brings you all these tools at the end of all these mechanism, or hides away all these mechanism for you. They try to make your life easier in a way, but then they also create this locking mechanism where you're like, if I want to get rid of this, how do I do that? What is the most challenging for you as a software engineer today that train other engineers into those technology? What is the most challenging for you or for your attendees to learn these tools?
I'm not really sure what's the most challenging, but as teaching someone, it's really hard to be patient sometimes, because you really need, everyone has like different levels, and there's always people struggling or not getting it. So it's really hard always to find like the exact time and need you need to put in there to make it available to everyone. But the thing for me most challenging is I learn a lot from teaching people. So every time I teach someone something new, I learn more about it myself as well, because there's always stuff you don't know, don't really see, or maybe someone else view and it's really different, and then you're like, oh, funny, I didn't know that. And then you learn something new. So I'm not really sure if there's something that's really challenging me. It's mostly like I do all stuff, I just do it, and then I'll see how it ends up. I don't try to think about it that much in the beginning.
But when did you start teaching? Like was
so at one point I started at startup, and I created this platform, and we had a lot of interns. So I really liked teaching interns new stuff, because they had the problem that most of their schools didn't taught them all the technologies they wanted to use. So schools still teach HTML, CSS, PHP, and those kids are like, we want to learn new stuff like React or GraphQL or more JavaScript at all. So I was actually teaching them how to do it on the job. And then at some point I was like, okay, so I taught other interns how to use these technologies.
Yeah.
I also want to teach other people, like outside of my own company. And that's when I started to do talks and give workshops and really get involved in the community.
Okay. What triggers the fact that you start giving those talks? Because workshop, okay, then you go out there. There is this need of giving more to do. What is the trigger for you?
I'm not really sure what's my trigger. I just like to do it. It was really hard for me in the beginning because I always was good at doing presentations at school, but I'm not really that outgoing. So I was like, no, I'm not sure if I should be on a stage. But then I did it the first time. It's like, oh, this is actually really fun.
Okay.
So what mostly is triggering me is like all the responses you get from people that are like really positive. They learn new stuff.
Yeah.
I learn new stuff every day when I'm at a conference.
Okay.
And also you meet a lot of people, like both attendees but also speakers. And I don't really think it's more like a lifestyle, just getting in technology, into communities, helping people, but also learning from other people yourself.
Okay. It's interesting to like a lot of people that end up giving a lot of talks and stuff like that. I mean, people that end up giving a lot of talks, they reach this burnout-ish moment when they feel like they've been out there a lot and just want to cut from. Have you experienced that? Like,
no, not really. But I have a lot of free time as well. So usually, what my weeks look like. I work for the city of Amsterdam for an open source project. So I'm there as a contractor and I'm helping to build new stuff for the city. And it's usually like 3 or 4 days a week at an office. So it's already sort of something structural.
Yeah.
So that makes you feel you get up at the same time every morning. You go to work, you come back. And then in the evening, I try to either work on something like writing stuff. So I'm writing a book currently, but also writing blog posts, writing on Twitter, writing on other stuff as well.
Yeah.
But I also try to mix those moments with like social stuff as well.
Okay.
So whenever I do an evening of work, I want to do an evening of social stuff the next day, or sporting or whatever.
Combine and that's spreading a little bit your activities. Then you don't burn.
Yeah. So I do a lot of different activities during a week. So I think it's hard for me to get a burnout. But yeah, you never know. Maybe at some point I'll be at that situation. But currently I'm not. So
okay. So there are a few points that I want to touch on. I think the more I hear your story, the more I'm like, once again, how do you manage with your time? And now you just gave us a little bit of a overview of how you do it. But you're writing a book. You freelancing at the city of Amsterdam on open source project. Are we allowed to talk about that?
It's open source. So
you're running companies out next to it. You have other project next to it, and preparing talks. You told me you will be in the US in a few days for a talk. So once again, there's 24 hours a day. How do people do that? Okay, let's go step by step. Book.
Yeah.
What is that book about?
So the book is about React Native, and GraphQL. So basically all the technologies I'm using every day.
Okay.
So writing that book was less hard than I would figure in the beginning, because I'm working with all these technologies. I'm using the latest React technologies, and it's stuff you use at work, you use at projects, you use at your own companies. So it isn't really that hard to write it. And also when you're writing a book, you're also writing your talks, because concepts you're using in there are concepts from your talk. So maybe a concept from your talk is used in a book, or vice versa. It just goes the other way around.
Okay. How's the structure of the book? What is do you have a title already, or is
the title is still working on the title, because it's really hard to make a title on something that's using React Native, and also one chapter about React 360. It was actually something I might be using at the city of Amsterdam to build a panorama viewer. So it goes around. But the structure is it's 12 chapters and also 12 projects.
Okay.
So it starts with a really small React project, and then it builds up, and at some point we go to React Native, and then the final chapter is React 360.
Okay. And when will it be?
I believe the last reviewers are looking at it right now.
Okay.
So we plan to do it somewhere in October. So it might be the end of October, or maybe like somewhere in November.
Nice. Congrats already.
Yes, thank you.
I think from the outside, I feel like writing a book is hard, but
Yeah, sure, it's hard. There are moments where you think, why did I do that? But then if you make some proper deadlines and it was mostly I did it in the evenings or when I work from home or sometimes in the weekends.
Yeah.
So to go back to that 24-hour, I think most of us started having some structure, having some social events in there as well. But then I don't like to do nothing on a day. So I'm not sitting at home Sunday watching movies all day.
Yeah.
I sometimes watch a movie and then I watch one movie and not like a TV show for an entire
Like
day.
Netflix binges, like just sitting all day and then having next.
I sometimes do it when I'm at a conference and I'm at a hotel and it's like raining outside and you're a day early or a day later and all the other speakers left or maybe you didn't meet nice people to do stuff with. And I just go sit in the hotel room, watch a few movies and then go to sleep. But
nice. Okay. So you don't have the title yet. It will probably be available at the end of the month, but I mean by the end of this year. Let's put it.
Yeah, it will be available
like
this year. Yeah.
And you mentioned. Okay, I still want to get on a book because something that about the book. Are you doing more like hands-on stuff or explaining concept or how?
No, it's really
structured?
hands-on. I don't really like to explain all the concepts in one book because it's really hard to explain concepts that might be aged in like a few months.
Yeah.
So it's just hands-on. It starts with sometimes it starts with nothing. Sometimes it starts with a boilerplate application I created.
Yeah.
And it just helps you getting started with either implementing React and GraphQL together, or just implementing something in React or setting up Webpack.
Okay.
So it's really hands-on.
It would be nice to have you here once you release the book. We can just do a whole podcast
about the book.
Just get. So one of the things we're doing with Remo, that the organizer of the GSD conference in Dublin. So he wrote a book about functional programming in TypeScript, and the idea was like we just send. We're gonna give away a few books. So we Hackflix gives away a few books, but then people can get that on the Hackflix page of the talk with Remo. So happy to just sit and then discuss about the book.
Yeah, sure. I'll make sure to get you a copy once it's released.
Okay, cool. Thank you. It's on camera. Okay, then open source.
Yeah.
Open source at how do you say that? Gemeente Amsterdam.
Yeah, so it's local government.
Okay.
So it's the government for Amsterdam and like all small cities around Amsterdam that are in the same local government.
Okay. What is it about?
It's about a lot of different stuff, but the main thing I'm working on is a platform where you can find all open data of the city of Amsterdam.
Okay.
So there's like data everywhere. There are like sensors in the road that will track how many cars will go over there, and it's all information you can find on the website. And the portal is mostly, it's like two different things. So at one point it's you can find information when you're living here in Amsterdam. And the other thing is when you're working for the city of Amsterdam. So maybe you need to find out if someone can have a license for something. You go to the portal, you have a special login for like government employees. And then you can find more information about people, about houses, about roads, and all those APIs are open source as well.
Okay.
And the portal I built with some other guys, it's mainly built in React, and we're displaying all that information from those APIs.
Okay. And you mentioned React 360 as one of the things you might be using there.
Yeah, so we already have a 360 viewer, but it's built with Marcipano, which is something from Google.
Mm-hmm.
And they open sourced it, but they open sourced it without any documentation and without actually development in it, because Marcipano is also what you see when you go to Google Maps and Street View and stuff. It's using Marcipano.
Yeah.
So you can do the same with React 360. So I'm investigating if you can use it for it, because it's more open source than Marcipano is.
Yeah. Is there a plan in the future to do even a workshop or a talk on that about that?
Maybe, because it's still pretty hard. It shares a lot of concepts with React and React Native.
Yeah.
But still, it's still in development, and they renamed it like a year ago from React VR to React 360.
Okay.
And I tried it in the book, and still it needs a lot of extra work. So I'm not really sure if it's actually production ready right now.
Okay, interesting. So you work with React Native and React, And there is a thing in between. So you build web app with React and then native app with React Native. And then there is this movement about progressive web apps.
Mm-hmm.
What is your take on that, on the progressive web app aspect in the React ecosystem?
Yeah, I think they're really nice. They offer a lot of stuff, but still, I'm not sure. Some people really like to use an app for something.
Yeah. Are you still...
I don't see people using progressive web app for their banking or maybe to find a street or something.
Yeah. Isn't it just a matter of habit?
Maybe. This really depends on what you're trying to do. If you're doing something that works pretty well on a website, then just use a progressive web app.
Yeah.
If maybe you're building an application for a specific need, for a specific target, then maybe you need an application.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had a talk with our previous guest, Danny, and then he was mentioning obviously is a PWA advocate. It's like,
so he's really opinionated.
Yeah, but the point is say like I kind of agree with him saying I don't remember installing apps lately. I don't remember. Probably the Eurostar that forced me to change to use their app, but at the end I could have done it was just to change the seat on the train and this kind of stuff. I was like I could have used a PWA for that, or just a web app, like a mobile design web app for that, or Trendline as well. But I was like, it's not really it wasn't needed to go to the web app to build a mobile app for that. But then they will say, but users aren't aware of the possibilities of a web app or PWA yet, and we want to reach our users.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just build a native app because we can. But
that's interesting. But I don't know. I don't use that many apps. I mostly use websites.
Okay.
For some targets, I can understand you're using apps, or maybe you need one.
Yeah.
Something I did like a year ago that really it saved me a lot of time is deleting the Facebook app, because you're getting notifications all the time, and without the Facebook app, I don't check it anymore, and it saves me a lot of time. And the website works fine if you get like a comment on something, or maybe someone wants to friend you or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, the basic features are there already, and they work on the web app already. Have you built a PWA app already, or
it's not that hard to build one.
Yeah,
especially if you use like Create React app, you just set on the service worker and you have PWA. But
okay. Is there like as a software engineer, you obviously had a lot of experience giving talks, giving workshops, helping customer with their problems. With all those experiences combined, what would be for you the most challenging thing you encounter as an engineer? What was the most challenging project or experience you had?
I think it was building like my one of the startups I have right now, like the platform for buying and selling electronics. Because we had investors, was working with other guys, and also other people in your team. That's the first time I actually built my entire team with like different developers, like backend and front end.
Okay.
And the most challenging part for me was like if you don't know how to solve the problem and they don't know how to solve it, what's your take on it? Like, will everyone just stop working and do nothing? Or so it wasn't really an engineering problem. It's mostly like if you want to scale engineering, add extra people, how would you handle situations where no one knows how to solve the problem?
Yeah. Wow. And how did you go about it? Like if you're talking about scaling a team, that's actually a topic we touched on already with my guesses, and scaling a team and be able to make sure that if there is a problem, there is a way to go about solving it.
Yeah.
What did you do on your side?
For that specific problem, I think we just went around it, and then a few months later we solved it. But for that scenario, we just created something else, tweaked our user stories a bit, and then find some other problem for it.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. and with the product that startup you're talking about, you have competition like what, Coolblue and all this stuff?
No,
or
not really.
no?
The biggest competitors like Marktplaats.
Marktplaats, okay.
And also we're selling refurbished stuff on there, so then you're actually competing with refurbished companies or maybe Coolblue. But for most of the parts, it's just like Marktplaats. You have people selling and buying stuff, and people don't like to pay money for a transaction, but we need to make money somehow. So we ask money for a transaction. But then the other thing is you can't get scammed. On Marktplaats, you can get scammed. Someone can pop up at your home. Maybe he shows up, maybe he doesn't. Maybe it's even like a serial killer, you never know. So the thing is, it's a safe transaction and people pay for it. But it's still a transition in mindset for people, I think.
Okay, interesting. What is the thing about like you? If someone were to say like, I want to learn React GraphQL today. What will be for you the learning path they should go through?
Like the way I like to learn is just check out code. So something I really like recently is Code Sandbox. You just go on Code Sandbox and then you see the code and you see the running app.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to make changes. Just find some React application on Code Sandbox, start tweaking stuff.
Yeah.
And then see what happens. And then if you don't know what happened, read the documentation.
Okay. And how do you yourself stay up to date with what this changing world of technology?
Yeah. Well, something that kept me up to date was the book. So I used a lot of new React things like hooks and context and all this other stuff. I learned it while writing the book.
Okay.
Because I wanted to make it available for people in the book, so I needed to learn it myself first.
Yeah.
So that was one way to stay ahead. Another way to stay ahead is with the giving talks. So something I really like is ReasonML. And it was actually built by Facebook as well. And in the beginning, it was supposed to be React. So all the concepts from React were actually integrated in there. But then they figured if it's in ReasonML, which is based on OCaml, no one will use it. Yeah. So they changed it to JavaScript. But still, it can compile to a lot of different things and to JavaScript as well. But I actually got into it for a talk I was giving. I wanted to give a talk about like the next React or whatever could become next, and then I started investigating it.
Yeah, and then ReasonML, talking about ReasonML, do you use that in production or anything like that? Or?
I believe there's one tiny component now in production that's basically doing nothing than displaying a label.
Okay.
But the nice thing about Reason, you compile it to JavaScript, and they can just import it.
Okay. Yeah, ReasonML is quite an amazing tool. I used that probably 2 years ago, but then...
Oh, it changed a lot.
Yeah, it changed. It's changed in like a lot, yeah. We had one of our engineer that was like, you should all use ReasonML. Like, that's not the way you convince people to switch to a technology. But I was a big fan of OCaml when I was a student.
Nice.
That after that, there is no company offering a job in OCaml. So you're like, okay.
Apparently in London, Reason is quite big now.
Yeah,
a lot of banking and fintech companies are using it because they already have OCaml developers. Because apparently somehow most banking infrastructure is built on OCaml.
Oh, okay.
Or at least a lot.
I probably know why. I probably know why, because I work in London, and there is this thing. So the OCaml Lab. I don't know if you know the OCaml Lab.
Yeah,
it's a thing that is sponsored by a New York hedge fund that. I don't know if it's New York or London, but I know they have offices in London as well. I don't remember the name of that company. And those guys, they invest in OCaml at the University of Cambridge.
Oh, nice.
And then they have in collaboration with the University of Cambridge, they build this OCaml lab and then like a OCaml research lab. So they had people that could still maintain that at a pretty high level, and they built their hedge fund entirely on top of OCaml, and they were like hiring really engineers everywhere in the UK. And New York, I know they have an office in New York. I don't remember the name of the thing. I can show you quickly here because I think we have it. But I like OCaml. I like OCaml for like OCaml Lab. OCaml. Yeah, it's this one. So you get so when I type it, it says OCaml Lab. Yeah, it's this one, and Jane Street. Yeah, the name of the company is Jane Street. It is it's Jane Street. They're the one funding the research on OCaml lab, and I think they have offices in New York, London, and that's why Amsterdam as well. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's a very nice company, and I think they made a huge buzz about their company is really successful. So I think a lot of banks also kind of just follow their lead, and that's probably that's my theory. That's what I think what happened for OCaml.
Yeah, and especially with ReasonML, a lot of React developers that I know, I showed them Reason and they all like it. So everyone tries to move there somehow.
They like it?
Yeah.
Because it's weird that if you take the parallel in TypeScript and Angular, like people or anything JavaScript, and then people want to go TypeScript, and a lot of resistance. Like, we don't want.
Oh, really? Oh, most people at the City of Amsterdam are transitioning a lot of JavaScript to TypeScript now.
Yeah. That's for sure. But it took quite some time. But obviously, it's good that it's happening. But I had a lot of resistance from the people, the React community, to TypeScript. And obviously OCaml came along, and I didn't really follow anymore if OCaml was actually taking off. ReasonML was taking off.
Yeah.
Do you plan to do anything around ReasonML in your community, in the things you do?
I gave like 2 talks already about it, so it's getting there, and then maybe thinking about doing more blog posts about how to use it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of documentation, but somehow it's outdated. Because in OCaml, I'm not really sure how OCaml actually works, how people are using it. But what I heard, in OCaml, you don't really have documentation because all the code is self-documenting or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Someone was telling me that OCaml developers don't read documentation because they can take it out of the code somehow. So that's the problem with Reason, because there isn't that much documentation, because OCaml people don't write it. So it's really hard to get started with it if you don't know how to.
Okay. Okay, Roy. Tell me, we have a few more minutes. I have this thing that we do with our guests. So maybe you don't have such person, but we create this. How do we call that? The
Tree of life.
Tree of life. Yeah. So where our guests. I ask them if they have someone around them that they look up to. It doesn't matter if the person lives in the same city or somewhere in the world. It doesn't matter. The idea is to create a link where I first want to know if you have someone that inspires you in your journey so far. And if there is, if that person exists, would you be willing to host a podcast on Hackflix and be having that person as your guest? So those are 2 questions.
Yeah, nice. There's a lot of people I look up, like it's in business and engineering as well. But you asked me this question before, so I was thinking about it. And one person, I didn't really meet him because there wasn't any time. But last year I was speaking at .js, just a small lightning talk in Paris. And the creator of TypeScript was there.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't have time to meet him, but he also started some other programming languages. I think like Gopher or something like it.
He was also the one principal architect on C#.
On C#. Yeah. So that's someone I would like to really talk about TypeScript and how he got started with it, and how actually bringing something on top of JavaScript that's type safe.
Okay. Wow. That's a hard one. That's a very, very difficult one.
Otherwise, I really like the Amazon book, so maybe you can have Jeff Bezos in here. Maybe that's easier.
Yeah, you just made my life way, way harder. Okay, let me talk to Jeff for a second. Oh no, Jeff won't work. Let me talk to
Andres Helsberg.
Andres, yeah. I think that is doable. Is there a TypeScript conference in Amsterdam?
I'm not sure, but there are a lot of JavaScript conferences. So
Because what we could do a TypeScript day in Amsterdam, and then we invite him.
nice. Yeah,
So-
maybe that will work.
That will work. Because Amsterdam, everyone wants to come to Amsterdam. So
Yeah, I guess so.
if you can get a TypeScript, let me think about that. But I'm gonna make it happen. So you're
Nice.
gonna be the host, and we're gonna prepare the thing. I'm gonna make it happen. We're coming your way. So, the follow-up question is, where can we find you online? Where people can find you online?
You can most easily find me on Twitter or on dev.do. That's where I'm writing most of my posts now.
Okay, and then you have a talk as well in next week.
So next week I'll be flying to Washington,
Yeah.
and then I'll travel to Raleigh, which is in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And there's a really big open source conference with like over 200 speakers and 4,000 people.
What are you going to talk about?
I'm actually going to talk about open sourcing at local government, so the city of Amsterdam.
Oh wow, okay.
So what are the pitfalls, how to get started, and how actually one problem we had, we did open source, but we just put our code on GitHub and called it open source, which is not really open source.
No, that's like you can use it. It's there, but it's not really open source.
So I'll be talking about that journey and how we transition to doing more open source and not just put your code online.
Okay, perfect. So, do you have any question or anything that you want to add, or
to the listeners?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. You talked about what would be my engineering challenge. It's really hard for me to think of some because in the end, there are always ways to figure out. But I'm really interested in how people solve their engineering challenges. Like, do they find information online? Do they ask other people? Or maybe people are still doing rubber ducking. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's interesting. So that will be because on Netflix we're gonna have like obviously a comment section, so we see how people react to that.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. Thanks for your time, and hopefully we get to see your book. And then talk about it and get people excited about what's come next.
Cool. Thanks.